more Rashad Vaughn in our lives.
I was going to say, I heard that right away.
All right, welcome to the Brew podcast. Let's kick this off like we normally would.
Yeah, man, we're going down, excited for the season. You know, we coming off a playoff win. I mean, you know, we got a couple wins.
You're in a lot of trouble, and maybe it's because sorry, kid. Okay, Toronto.
That's an end well.
And it just really sucks.
That one ended a little bit
I
better.
feel like I fear Boston most of all out of any of the Eastern Conference teams. Nah. Yeah.
Whoo! There it is, the Brew Hoop podcast, episode 53. For those of you listening via just the podcast, of course, this will sound probably a little bit different from some of our other podcasts. We've decided to try out the live stream element of the system that we use. It's called StreamYard. So we thought it might be kind of fun, given the current situation, to have our faces be out there. So hopefully going forward on Sunday morning, we're going to be doing live streams, and you'll be able to tune in with us, see our faces, see us, shoot the breeze with one another, talk about Bucks, talk about probably life, because there's not a whole lot of Bucks stuff to talk about as well. For those of you listening, of course, this is Adam Paris, co-managing editor of brewhoop.com. Thank you for everyone who's tuning in. Thank you for everyone who's listening. And I'm joined as per usual by Kyle Carr, it was joined by Kyle Carr. Oh, he's back. There he is. And
This is what happens when you have shitty internet.
and Riley Feldman. Guys, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I guess I'm usually the one that jumps in first. I'm hanging in there. We are on day 6 of quarantine. We've officially run out of rom-coms to get us through the cold evenings up here in Minneapolis. So it's about to get desperate, but I'm doing okay. I don't know if people know, I work at a large financial institution, and so we're still considered critical infrastructure or whatever. So I still go into downtown Minneapolis to work, which is probably risky on my part, but otherwise I'm doing okay. So.
Yeah, I am doing okay with this lockdown. With my job, it focuses a lot on college campus recruiting, which is really difficult to do when all the colleges are shut down because of this virus. So it's consistent of me working from home, which has been mixed. And then when I'm not working, I've been playing Animal Crossing or watching Psych or something. So at least when I'm not working, this has been fine. I've been able to manage. It's just from 8 to 5 where I'm kind of screwed.
So the working from home life, I'm working from home too. I have been for about 2 weeks. It is a very difficult thing for me to get used to. All of my routines feel messed up. It's the hardest part for me. I don't know about you guys, or Kyle, I guess, since Riley, you still get to go in. I have a really hard time not just like snacking all the time and just going and grabbing snacks from the kitchen. It's like impossible not to do that. I'm like trying to keep till my like lunch and then wait a while and then eat a big dinner routine, but I am not very successful at it.
Yeah, I think the weirdest part of the routine is more like the getting ready in the morning, because like I don't have to, get dressed and shower as much and not have to worry about driving. Like I still take Gio out in the morning and I'll still brush my teeth. That's probably it. So it is nice that I can save about 15, 20 minutes of my day, not having to worry about that.
Are you guys required by your employer to be like on the chat, like Skype or Microsoft, like whatever, like messaging system, or like my fiance, she had to do like a live video update to like, hey, I'm actually like working and alive or whatever. Have you had to do anything like that to like show to your employer that you are still working? Or
I've had to be on, like, I have to show that I'm online for Skype, but most of the time, if I don't respond to an email, everyone will know, because most of it's going to be, hey, can we give this person an offer letter, or when does this person internship end? So if I don't answer that question, they're going to realize I'm not working. But mainly Skype has been the way that I've just shown that I'm online.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have like people aren't like checking per se. We have people who can we use like remote desktop, and you can like see who's online or not. But I usually don't use that because it's slow as molasses. So I just like use my personal computer and then figure it out from there. We use Slack, so I guess kind of Slack being online is that way to do it. But I don't know. They haven't been too rigid with it so far.
Good. Nor should they be.
Is it weird for you still going into the office?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, so like I live near the University of Minnesota's campus, and so the bus line that we normally take is full of students for the most part whenever I go in the morning. And now, obviously, because the university is closed, there's like nobody on the bus. Like this past week, it was just me and maybe one other person in addition to the bus driver. But it's not too weird because there's still a lot of people who are showing up at the offices for my employer. And I think that's just because there's a lot of customer facing roles for me specifically, we work with a lot of export documentation. And so like somebody has to physically be there to like handle and then send them out abroad or whatever. So it's not too weird. And even in Minneapolis, it's not like a complete shutdown where it's a ghost town. There's still quite a few like people driving around. It's not as busy as it used to be, but compared to maybe like Philly or I don't know how it is in Madison, there's still signs of life, people moving around downtown. So it's not too strange.
Yeah, I haven't really tried going downtown or going out much at all, so I don't know how dead it's. I'm sure like around 5 o'clock when it's normally rush hour on the Beltline, it's emptier just with the lack of cars. But I would say working from home, what I've realized is it's nice when it's an option, but when it's forced is when it kind of sucks.
I agree. I had to start getting myself dressed and putting on like button downs and stuff because by like day 3 last week, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't like slide out of bed.
Point, thankfully.
I was like I was just like slide out of bed, get into clothes, work. I make dinner in those clothes, I sleep in those clothes, wake up, do it again.
Like clothes are rotting off of you slowly but surely. Like day 5 at work, my shirt has a giant hole ripping out the back now. It's good stuff.
Oh, all right. Well, NS on the live stream, working from home is where it's at. That's what I'm talking about. I guess we don't know what struggles you're having, but feel free to let us know in the comments. Anyone who's watching, feel free to just leave us a comment or something you want us to talk about. We'll be more than happy to interact with it, given the dearth of Bucks comments or commentary that we can have. But I am curious. We haven't talked really since this whole thing went down. Like, Kyle, what was your initial reaction like when the Rudy Gobert news hit and then everything sort of cascaded from there?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it on the round table, but it just felt like it just escalated really quickly because it went from, okay, this is something that be aware of, wash your hands, it's fine, to wash your hands, maybe try not to be around as many people as possible. Then it turned into, okay, don't go out, to we're just going to limit it to 50 people, to now it's a whole shutdown. Like everything just escalated so quickly. And when the Rudy Gobert news hit, I remember just sitting at home and it just like, as I was scrolling through Twitter, it just seemed like there was a new update where all of a sudden it was, okay, they're postponing the game. And now the game's pretty much called off. And then it was Rudy Gobert is testing positive. And then all the players are getting like locked down in one specific spot to get tested to make sure that they're not spreading it. And it just, and then went to okay, we're just going to suspend the season. And it was kind of the same. It was funny because it was always wondering which league was going to be the first to fall. And it seemed like the NBA was one of the first ones to announce we're done. We're just going to postpone it. And I think that really caught me off guard because like once the NBA did it, then you saw the NHL, then you saw, the NCAA tournament just got canceled. But then on the inverse, I'm looking at England, like over in Europe and all the soccer leagues, and they're still planning, the Premier League was still planning on having games that weekend. And then it took one of the coaches of the team to get it for them to shut down. But it was like England was still act like all is normal. Germany was going to act like all is normal, keep playing games. Italy was already shut down. But then you saw like Spain and France were kind of in that same boat where they just decided, no, we're not going to have these games. So I think for me, it's just more escalated and just like watching it in real time. It was one of the most surreal nights I think I've ever experienced just because it just seemed like it went from, okay, just wash your hands and like cover your mouth when you're coughing. If you have these symptoms, go into this is a full-blown pandemic. Everyone needs to stay inside. And it just seemed like it happened within not even like 24 hours.
I thought it was going to be beautiful because when they called off the Jazz, was it Jazz Thunder, I think, was the game that was going to happen. So when they called that off, I think the Dallas, these are all games. I have to go back, but Dallas was playing. They finished their game, and then like hours after they called and they had suspended the season, it looked super likely like the Pelicans and the Kings were going to go forward. Like
Yeah.
Sacramento was going to go forward with their game, which I thought would have been so poetic and beautiful for that franchise. A shame they didn't. Probably for the best, obviously. Yeah, for me, I think it was interesting because, like Howe said, if you looked at some of the leagues abroad, like I'm sure in China, they shut it all the way down. There was a lot of places that were trying to do it without crowds. So it felt like it might have been a little feasible. And obviously, once Rudy Gobert tested positive, that was just kind of game over at that point. You couldn't really continue after that. But I think had he not tested positive, they might have tried it through, to get to the weekend, maybe to try games because, it felt viable. Other places were doing it, things like that. So I think they should be credited, and I'm sure we'll find out as the months go on, how the process really broke down, where the different ownership groups came in. But I think they should be credited with the fact of getting on it as quickly as they did, and instead of saying, oh, there's been a lot of events that are like, oh, we'll push it back 2 weeks, they were like, we're going to give it the 30 days, then after that we're going to reevaluate. Now they've been not necessarily clear, but they've been pretty good at, through like Woj and Shams and whoever else, to say, we're considering maybe July, August, maybe we'll do something like, without the fans at that point, if we can quarantine people. I thought it was a little zany that like Silver the other day was like, we might do a charity game. I was like, I don't know if now is the time to do that, like a week after you suspended the season. But I appreciate the thought that's behind that. So, I think they should get credit, at least from the league office, for being relatively straightforward or pretty clear about they don't know how they're going to handle it yet. But instead of saying just 2 weeks, then we'll look for, we'll figure it out. They gave it 30 days. They didn't pressure themselves, and I think that'll help out for figuring out whatever the solution is down the road.
Yeah, and I mean, by all indications, I mean the solution, there really isn't one right now. I don't really think we're going to get any clarity on what the solution might be for a long time. I know, obviously, like Woj has insinuated, they've talked about maybe August or something, looking at dates, I think. But like, the hardest part for me, I think, is that we just have no clue when it might even come back. Like, we probably won't know for months when we might even be able to see NBA basketball, if we'll see it at all going forward.
Yeah, and I think, and we can probably jump right into that, talking about what the solutions are. Obviously, I mean, Adam, we're gonna have to defer to you since you're the podcast medical expert. So, so obviously you're gonna be able to give us the breakdown of what the best case scenario is. But I think the most realistic option, I don't believe they're gonna call off the season completely. Obviously, if we continue to have this relatively haphazard national solution to the whole thing, then that's gonna open up a lot of variability. But I think if you get to July and August, I think at this point they'd be okay with having a shortened next season, pushing that out to like Christmas or whatever they've said, and then just skip right to the playoffs. Maybe the first or the second round is shortened, and then you go from there. But I think there's almost too much at stake, and we've already talked about, there's been a lot of discourse around the league of the regular season doesn't really mean anything. There's, not as much interest. There's still a lot of interest, but not nearly as much. And, even for me personally, I was feeling it these past couple of weeks where it's like, I'm kind of not tired, but I felt the attrition of the year and like the weird balance between like the wins are everything, but the losses don't mean anything at all. And the Bucks were kind of struggling a little bit. So there was like this weird confluence of things that made my personal enjoyment of the regular season, a little touch and go at the end of the year here. And so I think they're going to just skip to the playoffs. It's the easiest way to do it. Shorten season next season, do it around Christmas, and then go from there. But I don't know if there's an ideal solution that, or something that seems more realistic to you guys or not.
Yeah, I think the issue is I don't think it's coming back until summer, maybe June at best. But I think it would just be easier to jump into the playoffs. Maybe have the first round be a best of 5 instead of a best of 7, and then you can still have rounds, the next couple rounds be the best of 7. Because no one has a balanced amount of games played, do we try and get to a number that allows all the teams to have the same number of games? So then that way you can just base the record off of that, because you look at Milwaukee, I think they've played 1 or 2 less games than, I want to say, like Toronto. Like, there are teams that are like, they've played 2 or 3 more games already. So how you manage to get everyone on a level playing field, and then go into the playoffs and it's not as much of an issue in terms of like what teams are going to make the playoffs. It's just more of a how do you determine seeding and the Western Conference. There's still a couple teams that are just neck and neck, so it's just more figuring out the seeding. So maybe just getting games to, maybe I think they played like what 50 or 60-ish, get them to 70 or 72 instead of the 82, and then he can jump straight into the playoffs. But I think it's going to start in like June or July, have a shortened next season, and have it start at Christmas, which would probably be even better for the league, because then you can have games on Christmas Day, and you already get enough viewership when that happens, but then you can increase that even more because it's going to be a return to the NBA. Everyone's going to be available to watch come Christmas time, and you can still have your marquee team start off, and then everyone starts, the 26th. So I think a shortened next year is going to be better and I don't think anyone has an idea, just because this hasn't happened before to this extent. It's one thing if it was just one pocket of the country that was affected by this, but it's the whole country. And not only that, it's also a worldwide thing. So you're looking at every other league is kind of trying to figure out the same thing. NHL is trying to decide how we're going to do this. MLS is trying to figure out how we're going to do this. The XFL had to completely decided where it's going to give up on this year, but we'll come back next year. So how many other leagues are going to follow suit and just maybe join later in the summer, or just, I don't think anyone's going to cancel the season, because I feel like there's a lot of financial ramifications that can happen with that. So I think they'll finish this current season, and then if they have to start the next season later, then they're going to do that.
Yeah, man, this is like uncharted territory. I'm just going to shout out Ross J on the stream, working from home starting tomorrow. I know you say you got to motivate yourself to shower. You got to do you, but I would highly recommend it as someone who's worked from home for just a few days now. I would highly recommend it as a starting point. Maggie Kingman, shout out, watching the stream. She's wondering whether this will affect Giannis and the boys messing with their routine. I forget who tweeted it out, but seeing like some basement or something. But I also thought I saw something about like Jared, some athlete who was on some pod with a national guy that I didn't listen to, talked about how they think like players need like a month or something to get back into their routines. Because I think that's the other thing is like, we've also had this up in the air of like, can they go to the facilities? Can they not go to the facilities? Like, how are we going to be able to let players even get into the idea of ramping up to full speed? Because, there's a reason there's like a month-long preseason before, the season even starts. And this wait will probably essentially be as long as the off season. So, how is this going to potentially affect the idea, Riley, of like, will the Bucks be able to like get back into their routine, whether it's like just chemistry on the court or just individual player, fitness?
Well, the beautiful thing is, because of the way Budenholzer's system is set up, we don't even need to be in shape. We don't need to practice anything. We know exactly what we're going to do every game. So I'm not worried there.
Okay.
Not so much like, I think the question Maggie poses is a good one, because for somebody like Giannis or like Chris or any of the guys who maybe have bigger contracts or are planning on staying in town in theory a little bit longer, they have like homes and everything. And I think, like you said, like Giannis, he has his own workout area. I think he was working on building like a basketball court semi-recently onto the house or whatever. So, for those guys, it might be easier to stay in shape. I think my concern would be probably for the guys like a Pat Connaughton or any of the guys who just like have apartments where even if they're in that location, maybe their building has like the shutdown on the equipment they can even go to. And like you said, the facilities. So like, even if they could, or, wanted to try and keep in shape, it's going to be a lot of like high intensity interval training YouTube videos at home to stay in shape for the most part, which like, that's one thing to do, but it's definitely not the norm for them. And so, I saw, for example, Pat Connaughton on Instagram, he posted on his story about he's playing some Call of Duty, which I'm thinking that's going to help his reflexes when it comes to seeing the ball on the court when we're back up to full speed. So I agree that I'm not worried about their commitment per se. Like, there are a couple of players who probably let themselves go in the off season, but because they're still residually in the mode of being in the regular season, it's just going to be more so, do they have access to their own personal facilities, and I'm sure they're in contact with like the team physicians, with Suki Hobson, I'm sure the coaching staff, everybody. So I'm not too worried, because it's not like the off season where we I'm not a player, so I don't know how it works, but it's not like you sort of drop off the radar for a couple of weeks to a month. I'm sure they're in contact for the most part throughout the week to kind of get an idea of here's what we're doing, here's what we'd like you to do. And then if and when the season returns, which, I think that's still an open question, then I think it'll just be a matter of, can we get back up to efficient speed to understand and kind of get used to each other once again. So I'm not too worried about like anybody adding 40 pounds during this impromptu off season per se. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question. I don't know exactly how they'll handle it.
Well, I think it's kind of tough because like the best way to get in shape for the basketball season is by playing basketball. And I mean, you can run outside as much as you can. You can do all the interval training. You can do the strength training. But I feel like cardio-wise, it's just so different unless you're playing basketball consistently. I'm not worried about. Yeah, I agree with Riley. I'm not worried that players are going to let themselves go and sit on the couch and play Xbox 24/7. But it's definitely going to be. It's more like the rhythm, kind of like, especially with someone like Chris, where it takes him a while to get into a rhythm with the shooting. That might be a little bit affected. Maybe it'll actually help Brooke, kind of reset and improve his shooting. But I think it's going to be more the rhythm and how things are going to go with shooting, with defensive positioning, kind of more that area. But in terms of being conditioned, I think everyone, and then the nice thing is everyone's going to be on the same playing field, so it's not like one team is going to be completely shut out and out of shape just because everyone's in the same boat. So everyone's going to have to regain their fitness and regain the rhythm.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a fascinating, return to form if it ever happens, going forward. NS is wondering, is LeBron going to win the MVP now? I think all these weird regular season awards are like completely up in the air. I mean, it happened at a good time that any sort of momentum LeBron was getting will probably come to be stalled out now for our boy Giannis. There's a lot of months here where the stat nerds can really go to town on Giannis, PIPM, RPM, all this kind of stuff, really, really ramp up our boy. But I don't even know how they'll, Ross is wondering, he thinks the playoffs are over. They'll announce in May they won't have a postseason. They'll just go forward with next season in the fall. I mean, I don't know. How would you guys feel? I mean, I know personally, like you, Riley, I kind of felt the same way. Like, I love this season. Can't really complain about being on pace for 70 wins. But given like the taste of last year, it's the whole year was kind of like, I'm kind of ready for postseason basketball. Yeah. I would be pretty bitterly disappointed, obviously, if we don't get to see the Bucks compete at that sort of high level.
Yeah, and I've seen people been like, well, like I think NS also said we get the supporter shield like for having the best regular season record, which I mean, I guess that'd be if the NBA is really committed to like trying to mimic other soccer leagues around the world, maybe that's what they could do is they'll introduce that award on top of everything. Yeah, I mean, it would be disappointing. Obviously, I think it would be more so disappointing. And it's kind of mixed because there's part of me that's like, if we lost in the in the Eastern Conference Finals again, does that just ramp up the speculation? Or like now that we can't even have the possibility of losing, so well, Giannis can't be mad because we didn't, obviously we would have won the entire damn thing. And I think what would also be a little disappointing, or maybe a little not confusing but difficult to work out, is if they cancel the whole season, what does that mean for things like the cap number next year? If they have this huge drop in basketball revenue, does that automatically really lower the ceiling for how much a supermax for Giannis could be, for example, and how does that affect his decision? And so, I would be worried about losing the rest of the season because you lose a chance to win a championship, even though we could like declare ourselves fake champions if we wanted, nobody could say otherwise. You're right that the timing was perfect because we were getting a little wobbly there between the Bucks and the Lakers. So between the MVP conversation and the best regular season record, be good timing by Lazary and Edens to release the coronavirus at that time. And I think I would just be more so, I would move on at this point because we're already a week in, 2 weeks in, however long it's been. Feels like it's taken forever. And wondering what that means for like contract situations and how does that adjust Giannis's expectations or his calculus? Is he like, well, being stuck with coronavirus in Milwaukee is not as cool as being stuck with coronavirus in LA. Is that something he considers as well? So that's kind of what I'm keeping in mind about the season.
Yeah, I think I don't think they're going to get rid of the playoffs. Like, if anything, they'll just get rid of the rest of the regular season, because if there's anything that's going to make the NBA a lot more money, it's more playoff games. Just increase the viewership, just increase the stakes. So I think, and the owners can charge more money for tickets. So I think they would rather just call off the regular season, just go straight into playoffs, because that will make more money than a bunch of regular season games. But yeah, it would kind of suck if the Bucks didn't have that chance to get the title, just because, and I'm going through this right now with Liverpool, is if they decide this year is just going to be canceled, well, then all that work that they put in for the months prior, over 75% of the season is completed, isn't really fair to just decide, no, we're not going to have this. So if they decide to give the Bucks the title as a consolation prize, I guess I'll be somewhat okay with it, because it's still a title, damn it, and I've been waiting my whole life for it. But it would definitely feel a little bit hollow if that happened. And I just think what would likely be the scenario is Giannis might just decide, hey, I'm just going to, we didn't get a chance to compete for that title, I'm staying. And maybe he just signs a 1-year contract just to come, just prove it, and then everyone comes back, wins the title, signs the Supermax. But it would be kind of funny that if the season were called off and it just went straight into the offseason, that is what convinces Giannis to sign, because he's like, we could have won a title, I want to win it, signs the Supermax. I'd be like, okay,
we'll
cool.
take it. I'm willing to lose the season if that means we get a better contract on the back end. And I should say, it would be incumbent upon us, if the Bucks were awarded a totally hollow title, we'd have to go to the parade 100%. Like, I don't care how hollow it would be. And there wouldn't be a parade because of the coronavirus, but like we'd have to stream the parade and like do commentary during it, at least, just to really soak it all in from a distance.
All I'm going to say is the University of Wisconsin won the simulated tournament on ESPN, and they are ready to print T-shirts and stuff. I would do that for the Bucks. I'm just saying we can call breaking tea and make that shirt happen.
Oh God, I the Giannis thing is such a fascinating part of this, because truly that was one of the first things that crossed my mind when this happened. Is like, boy, this feels like a lot of complications for something that was either going to have like a very clear, okay, we win the title, he's probably lose, and then there's a whole other offseason of speculation, and now we might just get speculation regardless. And it comes with this weird added like not a benefit, but like a weird added amount of like, well, what was the potential for the Bucks to win it this year? They looked really good, but like, how much does that mean to Giannis? Like, they didn't even get to show anything in the playoffs if those are canceled for some reason. I feel like, I was still leaning towards Giannis staying. I still would be leaning towards Giannis staying. I think there's a lot of stuff just in regards to like him. And Maggie was wondering how, our opinion on it. I think there's just a lot of, ancillary stuff about Milwaukee that he likes. The fact that he doesn't really have to do that many media obligations. Like, he's able to just sort of keep to himself. Like, he doesn't really want stuff getting out that often. He kind of wants to just really, he's just a guy who really cares a lot more about basketball. So that's kind of why, a big reason why I think he might, would probably lean towards staying. But this whole, coronavirus situation throws everything for a loop.
Yeah, I think Giannis would. I think before the coronavirus, I would have said if the Bucks made the Eastern Conference Finals, then I would feel confident in Giannis staying. I still feel that way. It would just take a massive falling apart of the team. Maybe Chris just does something that pisses Giannis off to no end, or Budenholzer throws him under the bus, or throws his brother under the bus, or something. It would take something big for I think Giannis to change his mind, whether it's just the players pissing him off or the team just severely underachieving. So I still feel confident that he's going to stay, just because I think he keeps saying he wants to be Kobe. He wants to, stay with the team as long as possible. I think as long as the Bucks give him ample reasons to stay, which I feel like they have to a certain extent, I don't know where else he would go that would help him win a title more likely, because I don't think going to Golden State is going to do that. And I don't think, other than Toronto, I don't even know if they have the cap space, and if they do, then you have to shift the roster around. So I think there's too many teams that don't have both the cap space and the talent for him to just jump in, and kind of like a LeBron back in 2010, where he can just jump in and instantly be a contender.
I would love the oral, like if there was a situation where Chris and Giannis, because they're both competitive, we've heard all these articles about them, really scrapping it out when they were trying to figure out roster spaces and minutes and everything. If I think Thanasis is better than Giannis away from Milwaukee. Now I think You're right, Kyle, that at this point, and going back to Maggie's original question, it all comes down to the Bucks have done pretty much everything besides pay the luxury tax, which we don't have to get into. They've done everything that you could really realistically ask for as a player to put you in a position on the basketball side of things. And I think, as much as I like ragging on the ownership group because it's just what I do, they should be given credit for like all the upgrades in the training facilities and the staff. And, I think there are questions about Budenholzer, but I mean, given the circumstances where we were at before with Jason Kidd, I mean, obviously the upgrade is massive. And so from all those aspects of like what you do, what a basketball player has to deal with on a day-to-day basis, he is the big fish. Like he obviously is like king of the city. If he sticks around, I would have no problem with like declaring him the best player in franchise history if he signs the Supermax. So there's like, there are a lot of different driving factors where does he, like Kyle said, is he looking at his legacy long term? And yes, we live in this era where your legacy is tied to how much winning you do. But I mean, we're winning in boatloads, and like we were saying, we only have last season as the one example of coming up short. Who's to say if we have 3, 4, 5 more shots at it, if that would continue to happen? And even then, even if you were still struggling, I'm sure the organization would be willing to make changes as well. And so it all comes down to like a lifestyle thing. Like, does he appreciate the relatively low profile he has in Milwaukee and Wisconsin generally? Or is he looking for something where like, his girlfriend, her family's from California, I think from like Fresno or something, is there something where that would make more sense for him because most of his family besides his mom is going to be out and about, around the league, except now Thanasis is here. So those are the kind of different things. I feel pretty confident. I'm just not sure if it's going to be like the full, is it 5-year extension? I think 4 or 5-year extension. I'm not sure if it'll be the full thing. It might be like 3 seasons, 2-3 seasons, like the LeBron situation, just so you can keep his options open. But, at this point, I think an extension would come. It's just a question of how many years to me more than anything else.
Yeah. Shout out Ross, who's R983 on Brew Hoop. You mentioned that. Brew Hoop commenter and fan post extraordinaire. Thanks for joining, man. Yes. So Mark Schultz joins. He asked a question. Any ideas how the NBA and WNBA could enhance each other if they are playing at the same time? So I'm admittedly not like a big WNBA fan, not for any, I just never really have watched it that much. I kind of am basketballed out, honestly, by the summer. But he brings up it's an interesting point I hadn't thought about, is most of those, those teams are playing in arenas that, NBA teams are playing in as well. So like there's another added element to that. And we've talked, there's plenty of scheduling conflicts already for these places, whether it's concerts that were going to happen. The Democratic National Convention was going to happen in Milwaukee. I mean, I don't think they've said anything about that yet, but that's obviously a scheduling conflict as well. In terms of how they could enhance each other at the same time, I'm not totally sure how they would do that. And I would honestly wonder whether the WNBA season would happen, just given I know the financial ramifications of that league are, there's a lot of issues with that and bringing in any money for the NBA.
Yeah, I think the toughest part would be just not really the arenas, but just more trying to market it. And I think the best thing you could do is maybe have like a WNBA game like follow an NBA game, or vice versa. Kind of have it like be a double header. And at least with, like Minnesota, with the Lynx and the Timberwolves, they share the same arena. So maybe you still have both events going on. And I team like the Timberwolves, where they're probably going to need as many fans to show up as possible. They can say like, if you buy, a Lynx ticket, if you buy Timberwolves ticket, you get the Lynx ticket for free or something. Like find a way to like incorporate both of them. So I think for teams like that share the same city and share the same arena, you could do something like that. But for other teams like over in Connecticut, maybe you just have it that they have a doubleheader, so have the game go before or after. It's going to be, I kind of agree. I don't know how they're going to do this year because the WNBA has to get a lot of, fan traction and get people to show up to the arenas, just because it's not like they have like the greatest media contract. So maybe this is something like a channel like Lifetime, or, just another channel jumps in and tries to get the advertising rights. I don't know if that's even possible, but just trying to find ways to do that, just because it's going to be difficult to have those two overlap, and you still have baseball, and you'll have a lot of other sports going on at the same time. So it's just more of trying to get everyone's attention. I'll try and watch WNBA if it's on, and it's like if it's readily available on like ESPN, then I would gladly watch it. But that's kind of the tough part. I feel like it's never on like a streaming platform. So maybe if it's solely on ESPN Plus, that would be better than nothing.
Yeah, I think this whole thing brings up an interesting question about where you put the season, because I mean, I don't really care about baseball. Personally, I know there are people who care about baseball, but I think even baseball fans would admit that like the first half or like 2/3 of the season is just kind of, it's not lackadaisical, but there's a reason why there's 162 games. You can kind of come and go. It's not like, there is importance to every game like there is in the 82 for the NBA, but they lose their importance a little bit the more that you have. And so does this present an opportunity where for both the NBA and the WNBA, you move it? I wouldn't even say they're necessarily competing all that much with the NFL on the front end of the season, because it's the front part of the season, but that the like middle section of the year, it's not that they have a lot of stuff that they're competing against necessarily. So I'm curious, if they move it to the summer, are they able to like reorient? And if like the season's a little bit shorter, they increase like the importance of each game and they have even less competition between like football or, baseball. There's not that much discussion, things like that. And if you combine it and line it up, like you were saying, Kyle, if you're able to do it like a back-to-back where it goes right in from like a marquee NBA game into a WNBA game. And like the plus side is, I think for the majority of the WNBA teams, they're already owned by whoever the owner of like the local area, and like at least up here in Minnesota, the Lynx are owned by the same owner who owns the Timberwolves. So I'd have to double check to see if that's the case everywhere else. But, if you have situations like that, it should be relatively easy for the two leagues to coordinate with one another. And really, at the end of the day, it's no real skin off the NBA's back. Like, just more people watching basketball is always a good thing. And if you are able to push this other thing to then again loop all the way back into, if there are people who are generally fans of the WNBA or get into that, maybe they'll follow into other pro basketball. So, how they would do it, I'm not sure, but I think there's a possibility, which is why this is both annoying because the season's over, but also a huge plus because it gives the NBA a perfect excuse to do a bunch of experimentation that previously might have been fighting tooth and nail with like, Tillman Fertitta or whoever the hell to be like, let's do something slightly different because we have to because of this virus. And that opens up opportunities to partner with other leagues as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's really going to be fascinating. I do feel bad for anyone who is like, obviously, all sports fans can feel bad, but for anyone who is like a diehard WNBA fan, I really hope they are still able to find a way to do the season. Because personally, in all honesty, I bet that's probably one of the least concerns of anyone who's in charge of the NBA right now. And they're, they also run the WNBA, so that's kind of a bummer. So I'm really hoping that they do find a way to accommodate that for anyone who is like, a huge Lynx fan or a huge Sparks fan, any of those people. All right, guys. All right, so we had a couple topics prepared, and I want to move into them. We're going to be talking about players from non-playoff teams that you would want on the Milwaukee Bucks, and we are going to do that right in 1 second. We're just going to pause for a quick ad break, okay?
You guys are watching the magic happen right now live.
All right. For the podcast listeners, we're back. Thank you so much. All right, guys. We are going to do a segment where we go through players from non-playoff teams that you would want on the Bucks. And the Ross J, Steph Curry, that's a great suggestion. He would be good.
I like that one a lot. I like that guy a lot.
That's a really solid suggestion. I think he would work really well. But we put some parameters on it, and the parameters that I gave Riley yesterday were MLE, mid-level exception or less. But then I realized I said whatever Brooke made, and he doesn't make the MLE. So what we're at is $12.5 million or less. So a player who's slightly better than the MLE or less. So we had it at 12.5 million basically or less. Players that you would want from non-playoff teams on the Milwaukee Bucks. I found this exercise harder than I thought it would be, but I'm interested to see who you have, Riley.
So I think, I don't know how we want to do this, if we just want to do it like in the order that you have it in the outline, just kind of give or take. So here's the other thing that I did. So, for a lot of these, it's easy to be like, well, I would love Trae Young because he makes minimum. I'm going to assume those kinds of guys who are still on rookie deals or like really big parts of those teams, I'm not going to go for them. And so, I mean, I don't know if do we want to just start with like Washington or or Zion, for example,
Well,
or
you could just say, I would just say whoever you got. I wouldn't say we have to go team by team.
okay. So a couple of examples that I have. So, and a lot of them, you're going to be some of these names. You'll be like, I've heard of these guys before. Ish Smith, anybody? He's shooting 36% from three this year, a 4.8 to 1.4 assist to turnover ratio, perfect Eric Bledsoe backup. Charlotte, I looked through. The only guy I would have wanted was Marv, and we have Marvin Williams, so it's a huge plus there. I have for Chicago, Tomas Satoransky. I know a lot of people are really high on him as an option. Taj Gibson from New York, just so he doesn't kill us in case. I mean, I don't know if anybody's getting bought out anymore this season, but there was a time period where he was with Chicago where he would put up 40 and 25 routinely against the Bucks. So I think insurance to bring him in. Detroit, Christian Wood for chaos factor. You have to, right? I mean, at this point, there's a lot of different bucks you could go for, but Christian Wood is the upside play. Plus, it would fulfill everybody's desires to have not everybody's, but the diehard Christian Wood fans to have him back. Atlanta, I was looking through. There wasn't anybody who was like super competitive, like Josh Collins, I guess. Vince Carter, if you like, older dudes, if you want like the veteran savvy. There wasn't anybody there that jumped out. And then Cleveland's, just to wrap up the East, it's got to be Delhi, right? I mean, again, more backup point guard. I'm really not sure if I would say I was looking through. I had forgotten that Dante Exum was in the league because I haven't heard anything from them. So I think maybe Larry Nance would be the other option there. But if you're just looking at, to be silly, probably Matthew Dellavedova would be my next pick. So it's an interesting one. I was looking more so for like, at this point, backups for in case Eric Bledsoe detonates into a million parts. And, who knows if we're going to find out if that was the case. But I was just kind of looking around for point guards or guards in general that might be able to back up. Or, like I said, with Christian Wood, just kind of chaos factor.
All right. Well, R983 has a few here. He was in on Christian Wood with you. So didn't like the Ish Smith pick as much. NS has Tony Snell, R93 with Henson as well as the suggestion. Boy, those are a lot of solid picks. I like the mix of sentimentality and effectiveness on the Bucks roster. You really you walked a nice line there.
I think people forget, and I'm not sure if this is the case. Did Ish Smith have to start a game in that series against the Heat where we got totally dominated when he came with JJ Redick? Yeah, I would hope so. Maybe he does suck, and but part of the issue with this exercise is there's a reason why these dudes suck and they play on sucky teams. So I mean, you're not exactly having a lot of good picks, especially given the other circumstances. Maybe you could do like Davis Bertans if you wanted him, but I wasn't too concerned. So sentimentality, you put Davis Bertans. Okay. So, you can make the case for him. But yeah, so that's why I went for this, just for sentimentality. And he was like the least annoying part of the whole Orlando trade that brought JJ Redick to Milwaukee. So that's why I went for him.
All right, Kyle, you got a few?
Yeah, I had a few. So Washington, I went with David Bertans just because, to have someone that can come off the bench and shoot well, that sounded appealing. I do have shades of Nikola Mirotic nightmare still haunting me, but it would still be better than trying to rely on Ersan Ilyasova. So I had him. For the Bulls, I just didn't have anyone. There's no one on Chicago.
Coach Boylan. You wanted Coach Boylan?
If we could take rookies, I would take Kobe White. Like, he would have been a great option because I think he's going to be pretty solid. Or, I think that would have been fine. But I couldn't think of anyone for Chicago. Charlotte, kind of the same thing. We kind of got the one guy I would want the most. For the Knicks, I thought Elfrid Payton wouldn't be a bad option, just because I know he's not a great point guard, but he seems to have improved since his time in Orlando, just more in terms of being a ball handler and a playmaker. So I would probably go with Elfrid Payton. Detroit also would go Christian Wood, mainly because I just want to see how many subtweets he can fire back at Budenholzer again.
Yes.
Yes. Atlanta, again, it was kind of tough because Atlanta, I feel like, has like a bunch of guys on rookie contracts and then Vince Carter's corpse. So I guess I would go with Vince Carter just because my other option would have been DeAndre Hunter, but again, he's on a rookie deal. it's tough because on the Eastern Conference, I feel like a lot of these teams are just intentionally tanking, so they're just putting these guys on lower contracts. And then for Cleveland, Adeli would be an interesting one. Dante Exum was the one I went with just because I feel like he's the one guy from that 2014 draft that everyone was thinking this would be the ultimate steal. Like this guy is out of the three between Jabari, Wiggins, and Embiid. This guy's going to be the star. He's going to be the one that changes heads, and no one knew much about him because he was over in Australia. Now it's kind of like injuries completely robbed him. So it would be interesting to see how Dante Exum would be in the current NBA situation, despite all the injuries. So that's who I had for the Eastern Conference. I did have one extra person, even though they're technically in the playoffs. I went with Markelle Fultz or Terrence Ross because Terrence Ross wouldn't be able to kill the Bucks if he's sitting on the bench and warming it. While Markelle Fultz, I think everyone's starting to see it now how good he has been and how good he could have been if Philly didn't completely ruin him.
I think the Magic ones are valid. One, because the spreadsheet I put together accidentally left Magic people on there, and I forgot they're in the playoffs. Yeah. Two, because the Wizards could sneak in the 8th seed. The guy I liked Terrence Ross as well. If we wanted him, I think DJ Augustine would have been very good if we were able to select him. I had very few Eastern Conference people who I really liked. I don't know why. I really only had. As I was looking through the contract, one guy who is still getting paid, Josh Smith, shout out.
Let's go.
How is he still getting paid?
Stan Van Gundy's how.
Yeah, he's got that Larry Sanders deal. Okay. So I had sentimental people. I had Matthew. I don't know if I need Dellavedova for sentimental reasons, but I do. I don't think I need Tony Snell either, but I do need John Henson. And when I looked at the East and the players that were available, I didn't think any of them were really going to add anything that's going to help this team win the playoffs. So if I had to pick an Eastern person, I'd want it to be John Henson so that he could get a ring as a member of the Milwaukee Bucks. So he would be my very hopeful pick for this team.
Coach Budenholzer got his hands on him for 2 weeks and turned him into a sharpshooter from 3. It was the most amazing part of the first week and a half of the season was all of a sudden John Henson was just stroking it from 3. So I would agree that of all he wouldn't be the chaos pick. He'd be the nice guy who, we'll talk a little bit later about cult heroes. He did not make my cult hero list because I think he was a little too wishy-washy, but anytime a guy, I don't know if he necessarily deserved his second contract the way that John Hamm gave it to him. But anytime a guy is able to stick around with the team inside the next contract, if he's not the top tier star, he wasn't a bad guy or anything. I think he was relatively cool and he seemed to like Milwaukee. So, I agree. If you're looking for just rewarding somebody for years of service, if Ersan wasn't already on the team, John would probably be the second pick. So I agree there.
Okay. Yeah, he was also low-key one of my favorite Bucks passers ever. Didn't get a lot of play, but whenever I wrote a recap, I would always be like, this was my favorite John Henson pass of the night. You always get a shout-out. Yeah. All right, well, let's move on to your Western Conference teams. And real quickly, before we do that, Riley, NS is these 13-14 bucks on Brew Hoop. Once again, shout-out our Brew Hoop commenters. R983, he's got for some of our Western Conference teams, he's got Patty Mills, Shabazz Napier, Emmanuel Mergolo from the West. He wants Mario Hezonja. Hezonja. He wants to see what happens when Giannis sees him the first time at training. So what are you let's kick off your picks, see if Mario Hezonja, if Emmanuel's picks line up with yours, Riley.
So here's the thing, right? It's difficult with Portland because you could either be zany with Mario, you could be extra zany and go for Melo and just let's bring it all the way around, because I can't remember. Did we determine, does Giannis like Melo or does he hate Melo? I can't remember because I know he really got up for playing the Knicks in particular. So I don't know if that would be chaos factor as well, but I think, if strangely enough, the Bucks are the team that gets Melo his ring, that'd be a perfect end to his career, I think. Or Trevor Ariza would have been the other guy if I was being semi-serious. But all these picks for a lot of these guys are does he have anything in the tank left? For New Orleans, I had JJ Redick. That's relatively straightforward, just Wes Matthews from 3, but maybe a little bit more reliable or a little bit better with a shot creation at this, at their current place in their career. Sacramento, I know everybody hates Jabari Parker. I would bring Jabari back just again, if you're going sentimental and we're looking for rings here, let's hand Jabari a ring for everything that happened when he was here. I agree with R983 about Patty Mills. I think Patty Mills is like the really obvious, if I'm looking at this entire list for guys who could really contribute from the get-go, I think he's definitely the highest level just because he's, I don't even know how I would necessarily describe Patty Mills. I mean, everybody kind of knows what he's like, a spark plug. He's able to do a little bit of everything, really good with the ball in his hands. And so that's like insurance plus for Eric Bledsoe. I think Patty Mills, he might even be able to like just start on the team because he's that good. Phoenix, nobody really compelling because guys making under 12 million. I did Aaron Baines there. He's kind of like I would prefer him over Robin Lopez, for example, as the backup big, just because I think he's a little bit more of a proven shooter. And, he's willing to do a lot of centers are willing to do the nitty gritty stuff, but I think Baines would be a good replacement there. Minnesota, they suck so bad that it's tough to pick anybody. Maybe like Josh Okogie, I guess, but he's still on rookie contracts. I don't know if that would necessarily work. And then Golden State, I mean, it's got to be Dragan, right? Like, how can you? I don't even know if he still has a contract or a roster spot there. But if I'm going to pick anybody from that team, it's got to be Dragan. Just so again, we can bring him back and make everybody happy that we cut that guy, and it was going to cost us a title or whatever.
Oh, God. Okay,
that's my roundup.
Those are solid. Right. Wow, Kyle, what you got?
All right, for Portland, I had Trevor Ariza. It just felt like a dude that is willing to get scrappy and can still shoot and defend. So I had Trevor Ariza. New Orleans, I had Etuan Moore, just another wing that can come off the bench and shoot threes. I probably would have gone with Lonzo. We were doing rookie contracts, but I went with Etuan Moore for that reason. Sacramento, I went with the popular trade target, Bogdan Bogdanovic. Just, again, wing guy. He could probably start right now. As we've seen, he seems to be able to drop 30 on the Bucks whenever he wants. San Antonio, I also had Patty Mills. I know we talked about it in a previous episode of the podcast with trade targets, and Patty Mills would have been the perfect solution just as a point guard that, he probably could start over Eric Bledsoe right now, and especially in the playoffs. Then we got a little bit ridiculous. For Phoenix, I had Frank Kaminsky. Let's just bring in all the Wisconsin Badger fans. Just get all the easy money in the world. Jersey sales would go through the roof. It'd be like Sam Decker, but better. And then for Minnesota, I actually saw Malik Beasley. Like, because of that whole Denver trade, they got a lot of Denver guys that I like Martin Gomez and Malik Beasley. So I went with him. And then for Golden State, I just said Jordan Poole. I don't know. Seems like he would be okay. I guess Golden State doesn't really have anything worth a damn that isn't making a lot of money. So, and even the players that do make a lot of money, like Andrew Wiggins, I would want no part of.
Yeah, Golden State is tough because it's basically like 4 very good players you can't pick, and then like 15 players who suck ass, and you don't want to pick them at all. Oh man. Okay,
I may have gone slightly over the reason, but I figured that was close enough.
Dude, Kaminsky would be great. Well, if we could get Sam Decker out of Russia, bring him home. I think he's stuck over there.
No, we can just leave him in Russia. That's fine. He can.
Oh wait, hold on. Come on, he's a wing with potential.
I am not a Sam Decker. I was never a Sam Decker fan, even when he was at Wisconsin.
Wow,
I was like an asshole.
Well, I liked him when he was at Sheboygan.
Fine,
the early days.
This is why it's a plus being a fan of Minnesota, because nobody's good enough to play in the NBA, so I don't even have to advocate for anybody. I've seen, when I was in Germany for my semester abroad, I saw multiple former Gopher players at the Pro Basketball German League, so that's the level I'm aspiring to, is just seeing them in random encounters in the former German West Capital or whatever.
You guys said most of the ones I had. I had Patty Mills. I had Bogdan. Buddy Hield is probably cheating. Aaron Baines. I said Rodney Hood for I thought he might be okay. He seems kind of like a ball stopper.
Did he have an Achilles injury or ACL injury though? That's why I was concerned.
Oh, is he out now? Dang.
I don't know if he's out now.
Suki Hobson's got the secret sauce. We're good. She's good. She's got it good. She's got it figured out.
So, all right, guys. I feel like what's the conclusion we came to here? Maybe who do we think would be absolutely the best player we would actually want out of the ones that we said?
Probably Patty Mills.
Patty Mills.
Patty Mills out of. I mean, that's both a condemnation of the level of these rosters, which again is played out in their records, but also a shine on how good. I can't remember the GM's name right now. John Horst. Oh, my God, how good of a roster John Horst has constructed. We can we can quibble about the Malcolm Brogdon thing. The one downside of this season getting canceled would be we can't definitively find out whether or not Malcolm Brogdon sucks or if we needed him on the team. So that's a bit of a downer. But otherwise, I think the rest of the league, if you're looking at realistic options at a certain contract cutoff points, I think we've got a pretty solid roster from top to bottom, which this exercise kind of drives down. So.
Yeah, well, real quickly, R983, the official Brew podcast fact checker, has corrected all of us so far. Rodney Hood missed the whole season, so a tough pick for me. That being said, could still be helpful. Okay, but wait. Okay,
Blue
so
guy on the bench, it's fine.
Yeah.
If we pick Patty Mills, who are you guys kicking off? And you can't kick off Thanasis.
Damn. It'd be probably
Connaughton.
Damn. I was gonna say, so the issue with DJ is the guaranteed money.
That's a weekly
season.
Segment. We're gonna do that as a weekly segment.
The thing about DJ, and then we'll have to have a new bumper for that as well. If assuming we have to kick off guys who are like expiring, it would probably be Connaughton for me too. I think Sterling is your like extreme break glass in case of emergency. I know everybody loves Pat in the way that he launches himself, and apparently statistically he's one of the greatest defenders in the league when flying by dudes, apparently. So maybe we have to keep that around, but I would probably cut Pat too.
Wow. What's his KD ratio though? We gotta check that, see how he's doing there.
If it's not over 1.2, I don't want him.
That's the cutoff.
So,
amazing.
Wait, so what was the rationale for keeping DJ? His contract?
Yeah, I'm assuming. I mean, it's obviously in this sort of situation. This is, I guess, assuming that like maybe Patty gets bought out or something. So if we're trying to be semi-realistic, even when we were talking about bringing in Marvin, for example, it was this weird balance between, do you eat the money that DJ is going to be owed? I know he's still technically like an asset because now it's going to be an expiring for however much next season. Plus, you don't want to necessarily eat that money on top of whatever else you're paying. As R983 said right here, I think getting rid of Chris because everybody knows he sucks. I think that's a really good option as well that I didn't consider off the top. But I think when I'm looking at if you're adding another guy, it's just going to be who's expiring, and that's going to be like Sterling, Pat. Who else is expiring? Maybe I don't even know how it would work with the guys with options. I don't think you can necessarily get rid of them either. Thanasis, obviously you can't because he's Giannis's brother, so he's untouchable. So I think that's
he has a 2-year contract, so
he does as well. Yeah, he's guaranteed. Though I think it's less than DJ. So I think at that point you just cut whoever's you might not even bring back next season. So which is probably going to be whatever Sterling, I would guess.
Sterling or Connaughton, yeah.
Wow. Well, goodbye, Pat Connaughton or Sterling Brown. Hello, Patty Mills. Hello.
Just like that, we fixed the rest of the roster, boys.
Boom.
We did it.
There it is.
We solved the Eric Bledsoe conundrum.
All right. Okay, let's do it. Let's go on to our next segment. Top Bucks cult heroes for you guys. And we want to hear it for anyone watching the live stream. Chime in with your Bucks cult heroes too. But let's kick this off. This was your idea, Kyle. Let's kick it off with you.
So I'm going to go with, I don't know if he is considered a cult hero, but in my eyes he is the Prince of Cameroon,
Yes.
Luke Richard Mba
Yes.
Amute.
Yep.
I loved him when he came in the league. He was always my favorite player, even though he couldn't shoot worth a damn at the beginning of his career. His defense, I always vouched that he should be starting. He was I think at one point I said he was like the third best Bucks player to a couple of my friends who kind of laughed at me, but he was always like that guy for me. And I think it's kind of funny that near the end of his career, he became a 3-point shooter. I was like, man, if he could have had that earlier, I think he still would have been a Bucks player. But yeah, for me, it was easily him. He came to the league from UCLA, instantly was at least a solid player off the bench, which granted, we'll talk about this later with that team that he was on. There wasn't much other options, but yeah, for me, I would say he was the guy that for me was my favorite cult hero.
Yeah, when I was looking at this experiment, so I think we've talked about this before. I only became like a real follow the team fan and in like the Fear the Deer run, like a lot of other people. And so my like cutoff for cult heroes kind of goes from there on out. So I had Luke Richard on mine as well, and I was like looking at his. He went from like being a heavy contributor on like those Clippers teams with the Blake CP3 Clippers teams to like out of the league and like in a quick minute. So his drop off was pretty precipitous, though I think he was kind of struggling with like injuries and keeping the managing the load and all that sort of stuff at the end of his career. I had a couple of people. So to me, Brandon Jennings, I mean, he is a cult hero because he came up with the ubiquitous phrase that the team will never really own, but everybody else gets to own, which, and I think everybody clowned on him for it, but I thought given the state of the team, the state of that season, and the fact that we were just about to get totally slaughtered by the Heat, I thought it took a lot of courage and a lot of gumption to make that, and again, it's like, what else is he going to say? But I think shout out to him. I was a huge Larry Sanders fan before it all went, ass up, unfortunately, because after that, in the season before he got paid, there was like, everybody was like, is he like a borderline all NBA defense sort of guy? Because his block numbers, I mean, everything else was awful, but his block numbers were so crazy. And I remember multiple games where he was like, I wouldn't say necessarily the heart and the soul of the team, but he's very energetic. He was very like got into it with fans in like a positive way. I remember when Giannis was a rookie, he got Giannis a pair of like snakeskin shoes or whatever. It's like one of his gifts as a vet to a rookie. So I think up until the moment that Larry Sanders, the whole thing went down, I was a huge fan of him. And then the only other one I have is Richard Jefferson, not for any particular reason other than he's the only guy who I had a Bucks jersey of, and the only reason why I had a Richard Jefferson Bucks jersey was it was the cheapest thing on eBay when I was a freshman in college, and so it was like 3 sizes too big. It was like the old crappy red, white, and green like shimmery uniforms. So it was an awful jersey, but it was the only jersey I've ever had for a Bucks player. So Richard Jefferson makes a list because I wore his name on my back unironically for a couple of years there before I think I just threw out the jersey. So
Wow, an incredible list. I'm sort of akin to you, Riley. I probably became a fan more around Fear the Deer. Like fandom probably reached its peak around the Brandon Knight for MCW trade, which is pretty sad state of affairs for me. I still remember coming home and being like, God, this Ennis guy, like he's going to be a great deal. He's young, like lots of room to improve. So for me, it's 2, and I don't think either of them would qualify as cult Bucks heroes for anyone, but they are for me. Johnny O'Bryant. I think famous Buck, came out of LSU. Didn't quite have the athleticism of Shaq, but had similar strength. A lot better, player, able to, shoot from the perimeter, obviously, once he left the Bucks and went to Charlotte. But the reason he's a cult hero for me is the, yearly ESPN rank, where they rank like the top 400 players. JOB slid in at 399 one year. And forevermore, I was impressed by that, especially when he was above Clint Capella in those rankings. And then he was started for several games and basically only played like 10 minutes. Oh, okay. That's a good one. So JOB for me. And then Damian Inglis, who sucked a lot. But for his entire rookie year, I was convinced he was going to be like an amazing 3-and-D wing. He had all the sort of strength and frame to be able to do it. I was watching his tape from his games over in Europe. It was tough when he couldn't jump at all, and it was really hard for him to dunk. But he was like someone his second year. I was so excited to see him play, and then he just absolutely sucked. So, yeah,
I have some honorable mentions as well.
Go for it.
Number 1 honorable mention: Joel Prisbilla. Not only because he was just a massive, large dude, but also because I have his shoe and it's autographed, and he gave that to me. 12-year-old Kyle forever will love Joel Prisbilla. for him giving me his shoe. Also, Mo Williams. I don't know if he considers a cult hero, but he was. This is old, like early 2000s terribleness. But yeah, Mo Williams was also another one. Kevin Ollie. He was on the Bucks for a hot minute. He didn't really do much. He was just kind of there. I don't know. And then there was one last player that Reese Gaines, Wisconsin born, Racine native, Reese Gaines. Went to Louisville as well. So those are some early to mid 2000s teams that forever I always thought they were really cool dudes, especially Joel Prisbilla. Number one in my heart.
If I was to add two more honorable mentions, my two would be one, the idea of Dirk being a Buck, because I think he's been one of the most celebrated Bucks athletes since the trade that never was. So I think, in an alternate universe, Dirk and Giannis, we had the handoff there. And so, in my mind, I think he's one of them. And then the second one, he's already on the team. Ersan has to be the other guy, right?
Mhm.
Like he is a full blown everybody's cult hero. Obviously he can't move nearly as quickly as he used to. I think it would be a really interesting. I think if we were going under like the old Cole and like previous era jersey retirement qualifications, I think there would probably be a very legitimate chance that Ersan, since he played here for 40 years, could be a jersey retirement qualifiee. So that would be the two other honorable mentions I would add. But luckily, we already have one of them living in the flesh already on the team. So
yeah, Ursan's been there since they were purple and green, so he's been here a hot minute.
Yeah, great additions. R983 chimes in with Michael Beasley. Great
That's
pick.
a
I
good
feel
one.
like Michael Beasley is like a cult hero for every fan base that he was on, sort of in the latter stages of his career. He just said like some of the wildest stuff. So Michael Beasley, great addition. The white point guard from a small college, probably Nate Walters.
Yeah, Nate Walters, nasty
Yeah.
Nate, nasty
that has
Naters.
to be.
Yeah. Him, of course, same draft class as Giannis, really two steals.
That would have
for those teams.
been a deadly 1-2 punch had Nate developed in the way I think we all, because there was definitely I think Nate Walters was forced into the role. I don't know if was that Larry Drew and then maybe a little bit of Kid, I can't remember, but there was
Yeah, it's definitely Larry Drew.
Yeah,
Yep.
Nate Walters was definitely getting a little bit of burn, probably more so than he needed. But how good if he developed the modern Stockton and Malone would have been in Milwaukee for sure. Definitely a chance there.
Well, we had like a history of Ridenour was good for us. Ramon Sessions was pretty good. I mean, Ish Smith wound up being pretty good. So like Nate Walters, he really had potential. Mark Schultz chimes in with an older pick, Paul McKeskey. I wish I knew them more, but I've heard a lot of
good shout.
It's a really good shout out. Yeah. From everything I heard, Paul, Mr. McKeskey was a fantastic
Mr.
addition.
McKeskey. Mr. McKeskey. I know you're listening, Mr. McKeskey.
Oh gosh. Okay. Oh, that was fun. That was fun to go back. Good suggestion, Kyle. All right. Next segment, guys. We're gonna do a recurring one here. I just picked a random Bucks team from the past. And it's, would you want any of these players from this random Bucks team on this year's roster? And the team I went with was the 08-09 Milwaukee Bucks. So just for anyone, now my parameters are, I didn't tell you guys this ahead of time because I'm not a good host, but the parameters are you have to pick the player and that player has to be like basically from that season. So like, for example, if you picked Austin Crozier, he's in his 11th season. Okay. So you get like, 33-year-old Austin Crozier or whatever.
Yeah.
But just for anyone who's listening, you can look up that team, but here, I'm just going to run through the players and we'll kick it to you, Riley, for who you got. So Joe Alexander, rookie year, Malik Allen, 7th year, Charlie Bell, 4th year, Keith Bogans, 5th year, Andrew Bogut in his 3rd year, Austin Crozier, 11th year, Francisco Elson, 5th year, Dan Gadzarich, shout out, 6th year, Eddie Gill, 6th year, Richard Jefferson, 7th, Damon Jones, 10th, Tyronn Lue, 10th, Luke Mbamute, his rookie year, Michael Redd, 8th year, Luke Ridenour, his 5th year, Ramon Sessions, 1st year, 2nd year, and then Charlie Villanueva, 3 years of experience. So who you got, Riley?
This is a really tough one. To me, I would almost say the entire roster, because there's a roster of heavy hitters we got going on here. A lot of, if we were going to say cult heroes, this is the roster full of cult heroes. I appreciate too. I'm assuming was Joe Alexander, is he like a army brat or something? Because it says here that he was born in Taiwan in Kaohsiung, so I'm guessing his like parents were in the military or something, or he's like a Taiwan. He's from Taiwan too, I guess. I don't know. Probably not going to go for Joe Alexander, even though everybody obviously thought that he was going to be one of the greatest players of all time. If I was to be like a serious pick here, probably Richard Jefferson, just because, I mean, he was the most prolific player on the team that season. His 3-point shooting, he shot almost 40% from three, which is amazing. His rebounding numbers are pretty good too. So I'd say probably Richard Jefferson would make the most sense. Though, again, if I was to choose like a point guard, it's tough between Luke Ridnour or Ramon Sessions, because I think Luke Ridnour had he's like the experienced guy, so probably if I was to go one or the other, probably him. But I think Sessions would be a good shot as well. So I should note that Sessions only shot 17% from three, so it was not exactly his greatest foray. But you know, the league was different at that point. You were only taking like 23s a game, if that. So yeah, I'd probably go for, and it says here that 13-14 is in Taiwan right now. So I'm gonna need you to confirm Joe Alexander's Taiwanese citizenship if you can, please.
If I had to pick, I think I would trimmed it down to 3 players. It's either Andrew Bogut, Luke Mbamute, or Ramon Sessions. And I think I would go with Bogut, just because this was this was the season before his breakout. This was just before he became that all NBA type of player. And I think I would pick him just because his defense and his ability to be a good pick and roll big would have been very useful with Giannis and with Eric Bledsoe. Yeah, I think nope. I'm going to Mbamute. His defense would have been that would have been a valuable asset. His perimeter defensive skills, and he can match up with a Kawhi. He can match up with a LeBron, Pascal Siakam. He would be able to kind of provide the athleticism that Marvin and Ersan don't have. And I think that would have been very useful, and just to give Giannis a breather as well. He could guard 3s and 4s, so I would probably go with Mbamute if I actually had to pick. And that's not me being biased. That is just simply, if I had to think of defensively, I think on offense, Milwaukee wouldn't need much with the current roster, but they would need a guy just to like guard the toughest assignment.
Did we say Michael Redd was cheating?
No, well, we said at the time. You said at the time of their career. So I think this is after like 1 or 2 ACL tears for Michael Redd. So that's why I didn't consider him.
He was in the Jabari Parker portion of his career at this point, I think. So
wow. Okay.
I'm just saying from like post injuries, just he sustained a bunch of injuries.
36.6% shooting from 3 on 5.8 attempts per game.
He must have gotten an injury that season because they only played 33 games. So that must have been this was like the final year, because he played 72 games, he played 72 games the year before, and then after that he really dropped off. So either, we could probably go back and look, but I'm assuming he either sustained an injury or what, because after that, I mean, he only played 18 games the season after that, 10 after that, and then 51. He was like really dangerously close to playing his whole career for Milwaukee. That would have been kind of cool, I guess, even though it obviously didn't turn out well in the end, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would probably go with Richard Jefferson, like you did, Riley. Charlie Bell could be a low key one. He's probably about like what Pat Connaughton is for the team or something. He shot, what did he shoot here? 36.3% from 3. Maybe he's a better shooter now. But I kind of like Luke Ridnour. I always liked Luke Ridnour quite a bit. I think he'd be a good little addition. For the team, have a little more backup point guard juice.
Yeah, it was. I think it was a perfect roster to start this out with, and also we should note the other thing that looking at this and then going for cult heroes. Scott Skiles was a coach for the Bucks for a long goddamn time. Like I was like, oh my God, season after season, they kept trotting Scott Skiles out there. Like, I mean, you want to talk about a long leash. That was the place to be. Was in Milwaukee when Herb Cole was running things, because he would let you just roll for a long time before he finally pulled the trigger. So shout out to that guy for somehow being the coach for like 8 seasons.
Oh God. All right. Well, Who would you guys kick off if you're putting on your player? Just like we're no stipulations. I didn't think this through well enough. So just like, who are you kicking off?
Well, I'd probably kick off Joe Wilson and take a cap hit if I'm going to replace him with Mute.
Yeah. Again, if I'm trying to be like somewhat realistic with Richard Jefferson, I think that's, I don't know, maybe I just get rid of Marv right away. Like, like I don't know, like Ursan, you might be able to do whatever. He's got the contract next season potentially. So I mean, maybe Marv. I don't know. It's again, it comes down to like Sterling or whatever. If you're making that big of a talent upgrade, relatively easy to kick off one of the very end of the bench guys. And again, you can't, even in this situation, you can't get rid of Thanasis because he's Giannis's brother. He's that ironclad with his roster spot that even in this zany experiment where we're doing time travel to 2008, 2009, he's still safe with his roster spot. So shout out Thanasis.
Agreed. He's locked in. All right, guys, we got like 10 minutes left, and we won't rush it, but we got about 10 minutes left in live stream. So let's move on to our last usual potpourri final bits here. We're going to start it off, of course, with rapid fire questions. That's a terrible race car sound that I tried to find. I didn't spend a lot of time on that, just like I didn't with the questions. So first one, what is your guys' haircut plan during this?
It's a really good question. So my hair, as you can see, can you see it? You can kind of see it. It's getting pretty long. I usually style it over a little comb over the top because I got no creativity. My plan was to get a haircut relatively soon, but now I'm thinking the issue with me going for a man bun is I need to either get really jacked, so really start weightlifting a lot, or I need to get contacts. Because how many dudes do you see with a man bun who has glasses and isn't like gorgeous, So I think I'm in a tough spot right now. I think I'm going to let it keep growing because what else am I going to do? But what I'm going to like style it, put it in a bun or something. I mean, I don't know how long.
I don't think Catherine's going to let you roll with a man bun anyway. So.
She might just cut it off in the middle of the night, so we'll see. But I'm gonna just let it keep growing and keep combing it over until it gets too unruly and I have to do something else.
Yeah, I got a haircut a month ago, and normally I try and go like every month and a half. So I'm probably due for a haircut, but I'll just have to grow it out just because I'm not doing it myself because that's gonna end poorly, and I don't trust anyone else besides my barber. So I think I'm just gonna have to grow it out. Maybe I'll try and like shave the sides a little bit more, but the top is just gonna stay the same, I think.
So do neither of you trust your significant others to cut your hair?
I think my difficulty is she wouldn't know how to do the layering, and I don't even know what the hell layering means, but it's a term that's used when I'm getting it cut. So I'm a little nervous about that, and maybe it turn out fine, but and at the end of the day, the hair grows back, so it wouldn't even be the end of the world. And I already like put stuff in it to like fix it up when it looks like crap anyhow. So I'm sure if it came to worst and we did need to cut it, she'd be more than happy to. And it's not much I could really do about it. So
it would just be the line. That's my concern. Can't fuck it up.
Okay. All right. What is the since there's a lot of awareness about restaurants right now, trying to make sure that we support them while most of their employees are laid off. What's the best meal you have eaten? And if it's not like the best, just like one of the best you've ever eaten at a restaurant.
So like since the quarantine went into play. So like example.
Just anytime.
Just in general.
Yeah.
Oh, God, that's a really good question. So I don't know, Kyle. Do you have one off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head. Like, there's a lot of options I can go with.
So I'm just gonna give it. I don't have one. I don't have one off the top of my head like the greatest I've ever had. But there's this place called Gorkha Palace nearby my place. They're a Nepali Tibetan restaurant, and we just got some dishes from there, whatever, earlier this week as part of trying to help support smaller restaurants and everything. It was delicious. The curry, the sauce, how creamy it was, the different mix of vegetables and meats and everything. It was really, really good. And so I'm trying to branch out and find more places like that. There's also a Japanese place called Zenbox Izakaya in Minneapolis. They do really good bento boxes. Like, greatest meal I've ever had. That's tough. It's like, what have you done for me lately? And those places have done it for me lately would be my two shouts here in Minneapolis.
So I think overall, there's a restaurant kind of outside of Chicago. It's a seafood restaurant. It's called Bob Chin's, and that has some of the best seafood I've had. Granted, let me change it. It's the best seafood I've had for a place in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
It had lobster and crab, and it was pretty good. Like, we always go there. My family always goes there for big occasions to celebrate. So I would say I just remember like having it as a kid, and it was one of the best seafoods I had. I've been there since, and I would say that is the most memorable meal. But in terms of like local area, there's a Venezuelan restaurant called La Taguara. So they have this comfort meal deal. It's like $30, and you get rice, shredded beef, beans, sweet plantain, and arepas. And it can feed like a family of 4 technically, but since it's just Emma and I, it's like we were able to have leftovers, and that's always been one of my favorite restaurants. And then the other one I would say is an Indian restaurant called Swagat, and they have this chicken tikka masala. That the tikka masala sauce is probably the best that I've had ever. And I'll change my answer. That my Swagat tikka masala, fantastic. I need to order that soon.
I love that. So many diverse cuisines. Love those suggestions, guys. All right. Favorite extracurricular growing up?
Go for it, Kyle. You look like you might have one.
I guess like at the time, marching band was a good time. It was one of the few moments in high school I actually liked. Yeah, I would go marching band because like freshman year we went to Pasadena. We got to march in the Tournament of Roses Parade, which was pretty awesome. Junior year we
and
went
then
down
watch
to
Wisconsin
Orlando.
lose in the game. Sorry, continue.
Wisconsin didn't play that game. Thank you very much.
Okay,
It was
okay,
Michigan
all right,
and USC, so didn't have to worry about that. Freshman year went to the Tournament of Roses Parade march of that. Junior year we went to Florida and was at Universal Studios and got to march in a parade there. Otherwise, just like the state competitions and traveling around and doing competitions on the weekend. Yeah, it was one of the few things in high school I actually enjoyed was marching band.
I would say that my go-to would be Boy Scouts, which is like people just hear it and like, wow, what a lame, which I mean, some of it is deserved, but my family, my dad is an Eagle Scout. I've been it since I was in like Cub Scouts when I was like 5 or 6. All the other guys that were in the troop were really cool. The leaders were really cool. All the activities we did, you have your weekly meetings and all that sort of stuff. So I really enjoyed Boy Scouts from top to bottom, even if the organization sometimes can be a little problematic in some aspects of what they're doing and going into bankruptcy and all sorts of different things. But when I was in it for my specific troop, I really loved it and the different stuff we did. So that would be my shout out with some caveats on the side.
All right. Well, that's all I got, guys. We'll move on. Kyle, do you have a film review?
I'm trying to remember if I did Cool Runnings already or not.
I don't think so. No, please do that.
Oh, perfect. Then yes, we're gonna go with Cool Runnings. Classic Disney movie about the Jamaican bobsled team in the 1990, I believe, Winter Olympics. Just a good movie. A lot of great morals, and it's one of those where they were able to depict Caribbean culture without it being super problematic and annoying, which I appreciated. Like, there's still stuff that kind of made me cringe, but yeah, it's just a very enjoyable movie, very feel-good story based off of true life events. You kind of just hope that they make fun of the Swiss team a lot, and yet at the same time, I feel like the Swiss team just didn't do anything. They were just minding their own business, and it was more the German team that was kind of the asshole. So just good to see like how it all like turned out. Like I said, based on the true story. So it's just an enjoyable movie, and it's like and it's a quick, easy watch. I think it's only like an hour and a half, but yeah, good movie. 9 out of 10. We'll always watch it. It's on Disney Plus, and I was kind of mad when Disney Plus first came out. That wasn't an option. So now that they finally added it, made me feel better.
Wow, high praise. 9 out of 10. That's good. All right.
Yeah, I think that's the second highest movie I have besides Coming to America. Coming to America, I gave it 10.
Okay. Next up, we have the fountain pen review, and I have some bumpers here.
Take a fountain pen.
There you go.
Speak of the devil. So it's been a while since we last spoke about fountain pens, which is probably for the best for everybody involved, to be perfectly honest. I have 3 new pens in my collection since we last spoke about it. And 2 of them are Twisbees, which is a Taiwanese company. I know that 13, 14 bucks said they're in Taiwan. So I don't know if Twisbee's really well known or well, used over in Taiwan. But the one that I'm presenting today is my new Eco T. Is there like cheaper option? It costs about 30 bucks. And the thing that's special about it's 2 things. One, you can see in the middle there, it's a demonstrator. So the body of it is clear. I have just black ink in it right now, but you could do like green, red, whatever ink, and you can see it and slosh around. The other thing is the nib is a stub nib. So what that means is it writes a little bit thicker. And when you're going vertical, the lines are thin, but when you go horizontal, the lines are a little bit thicker. So it gives a lot of character to your writing. Just got it in the mail actually yesterday and really have loved it so far. It's really smooth writer. I was a little nervous because I write really small that it would be, too much ink for me to like be legible. But so far, like 24 hours, it's been really excellent. So if you're looking for a cheap beginner pen, something that's light, that's easy, again, 30 bucks. I know it sounds frivolous for a fucking pen, but in the world of fountain pens for 30 bucks, it's really, really good value. So, if you're looking for a friend or you want to start writing or, you're into cursive or into penmanship, this is a good place to start. So that's my super lame fountain pen review. I have 2 more that we'll talk about in the future as we milk for ideas over the coming months once the season gets canceled. So that's what I got today.
Yeah, and for any podcast listeners out there, you're going to want to see a little bit of this just so it's time stamped. Check out the video; it'll be on the Brew Hoop article that we put this up with. Around 1:25, you're going to want to tune in to see the demonstration that Riley gave about where the disruptor is. I think is that what it's called?
The demonstrator.
Demonstrator.
There we go.
We'll get there, guys.
You
We'll
got
get
the
there.
All right. Okay. To close us out, guys, we're going to do weekly predictions. Okay. So what we've done here is I have simmed each of these games on NBAGamesim.com. Shout out. I didn't pay for the premium version. We could sim it like 10,000 times so we get an accurate amount. I just simmed it once. So these are all home games this week.
Yeah.
Tuesday versus the 23rd versus Detroit, then against Houston, and then against Washington. So what is your prediction, Riley, for how they will do?
I don't want to be a pessimist here, but no, I'm just kidding. I'm going to go for 2-1. I'm guessing that I'd be really curious. I'm going to have to go look this up later to see how it runs it, like what math it's doing to figure it out. I would guess that the system gave us wins against Detroit and Washington and a loss to Houston because maybe the system is really out of whack with this like whole new small ball that's throwing the numbers for Houston all over the place. So I would say 2-1 is what the simulations said we went this week. Kyle, can your optimism?
Is it 3-0? How do we do 3-0 here? But either way, 3-0. Obviously, winning against Detroit, aka Bucks East, and then Washington, who are not that good. Brandon Beal still scores 55 points, but Bucks still win. And then with the Houston game, I think because of it being at home, I think the game simulator would give Milwaukee the slight edge, just taking the numbers and realizing, it's a home game for Milwaukee, so why not? So I'll go 3-0.
All right. I'm with you, Kyle. I'm going 3-0. I have some optimism. Real quick, I want to shout out Maggie and R983 who are shouting out Riley's pen review.
I got a little sample for you guys. Now that I see that the people are demanding more pen content, just so you can see, I mean, my camera sucks, but just so you can see, let's see if you can see the character on the.
Oh, wow.
So you can tell where it's given a little bit more thickness on the downstroke, sideways on horizontal. Now, I could show you examples of my other writing, but we'll wait for other pen reviews for that because those are from my other pens. But as you can see, it really gives you like some, I don't even know, like some gothic character to it. It's people get crazy with these damn things. So that'll be the last pen note. But since you're about to shout those people out, that's a little example of what this pen is capable of. Yeah,
we always knew that was sort of our demographic, and we're trying to play into that now. So thank you, Riley, for bringing that to us.
No problem. We're all 80 years old, is what the demographic is. That's what we're trying to exude here from the podcast.
Okay, all right, here we go. I'm gonna I haven't looked at these results, but we're going to go one by one to show you guys how we did. Okay, so first up is that Detroit game. Here we go. Oh no, we lost 119 to 116.
Who is the top scorer? Let's get the leading scores. Does it give you that?
Okay. Yes, it does. Christian Wood, 22 points for the Pistons. Oh wow, a monster 22.13 rebound performance. That is just nuts.
That sounds about right, though.
Jordan McRae goes off for 18.
Okay.
God, Langston Galloway 16. Tony Snell for 14, and then McKaylook 13. Thon Maker 7 points and 4 points for Brandon Knight.
Those both feel really right. Those feel correct. Of all the parts of this simulation, that's the one that really jumps out to me as the most realistic.
So they somehow, what in the world? So they got 30 free throw attempts.
Dude, the reffing is still bad, even in the simulations. Come on.
Okay. All right, let's see what the Bucks did. So we got 12 free throw attempts.
Yes, of course. Of course we did. Come on.
29 points for Giannis. Let's see. Very much on brand. Chris, 7 for 15. Only takes 2 3-pointers, though. Okay. Brooke Lopez goes 1 for 5 from 3, just like we all knew.
Damn, this is a really good simulator, actually. I take it all back. This is really good.
Eric Bledsoe, just 9 points. Pretty on brand.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. And the Bucks shoot 35% from 3, shoot the same amount as the Pistons, which feels a little odd.
Yeah.
You know,
not terrible.
But, right? Yeah. So okay, so that's tough. So Riley, you could still win this. Okay, let's go to the Houston game. Bucks win 117 to 100. They throttle them. It's not even close.
it's a murder. It's a massacre out there.
James Harden 8 for 20. Russell Westbrook 10 for 22. They held him in check. Good work, Blake. Good work, Eric Bledsoe. Wow, they shoot just 34.4% from the floor. Just terrible. Bucks, they shoot 52.6% overall. 26 points for Giannis, 18 for Eric Bledsoe.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Middleton only takes 8 shots. Just weird.
Not ready for the moment. That's what that is right there. That would be the commentary from the Chris skeptic crowd.
12 points, 13 points for Wes Matthews. Huge game for him. 5 of 5 from the floor.
Yeah.
Wow. So Bucks win 117 to 100.
This last one, this is nerve-wracking, this final game against Washington. Bradley Beal goes for 80.
Oh, no! 136 to 119 Wizards.
God damn it. Did Bradley Beal have like 85 points, I guess? He must have scored.
He had 43 points.
Yes, he did. Absolutely, he did.
18 of 32. He still only shot 8 threes, which feels weird, but that's fine. Oh God!
I think what's great about these. Oh wait, Han, you had another stat.
Sorry, they shoot 60.9% from the field, 48.4% from 3.
Dude, I've been saying it all season. The only way teams can beat us is if they shoot out of their minds from 3. We just happen to get hit by it against the Wizards. That's all.
Oh, that would have to be. Is that an NBA record?
God,
it seems like an NBA record.
I feel like the other thing we should do at these end of these exercises is what then is the narrative about the Bucks coming off of this week after these results. I think the Giannis isn't MVP / the Lakers are guaranteed to win the title narrative. It gets that much more ramped up. Even if you beat the Rockets because you say, oh, they're kind of gimmicky, they're small ball. You lose to the Pistons and the Wizards at home. I mean, we are a fraud team at that point in the national narrative.
Well, I would say there would be plenty of referee conspiracies after the Detroit game, just on free throw disparity. Alex Lazary goes on a tweeting rampage. Still doesn't get fined by the league, by the way. Yeah. Then Milwaukee went to Houston. Narrative is in Giannis's favor. Everyone memes James Harden putting his pants, so all is well in the world. And then the Washington game turns into this is why. It's kind of like the Phoenix game where all of a sudden everyone's just like, what the hell just happened? It's going to be the Phoenix game where Washington just shoots so well and there's nothing you can do about it.
Oh God, the narratives, and then I just want to shout this out because he was quiet in the first 2 games, but in this Washington game,
I excited now.
We can use it together.
I think I can be a professional basketball player.
I think I could be a professional basketball player. We do too, Dante. We do too.
He had 11 points.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
He was
Awesome.
fine.
Oh.
All right,
That's,
so
that's the thing that's most annoying about the season. That's really the thing that's most annoying about the season. We were waiting for Dante to win us a game or two in a critical playoff series, and we're not going to have the joy of that potentially this year, which is a real shame, which I think everybody here agrees would be the biggest letdown of the season for sure.
100% agreed. Wow. Well, this was a lot of fun. I'm going to say one thing real quick. Hopefully it was a good distraction for everyone. One real thing about the current situation. Obviously, just follow your local guidelines to best of your abilities. Wash your hands. I know it's really hard to do all of the kind of stuff that we're going to have to be doing in the months ahead in terms of staying inside, getting essentials. But it's really, really important for me personally, close to home. Obviously, we all have other people that we care about that if they get this could really be deadly to them. For me personally, I don't have a lot of family living near me. Thankfully, my parents are in a pretty good place. That's not true for everyone. And then my wife works in a medical ICU. It's the designated COVID unit for our hospital in Philadelphia. It's going to be really rough for her. So please, please, please do your best to flatten the curve and try and prevent this from spreading too exponentially and really slamming our healthcare to the umpteenth degree. So,
I agree. And one cheer note: happy birthday, Maggie. She commented on it. I'm glad that you were able to join our stream. Happy birthday to you. Hope you have a good day.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, and if anybody has suggestions for things we could do a little different, things you'd like to see us talk about, since we can only talk about the 2002, 2003 Bucks so many times before we lose our minds. So if there are other topics, I know, Adam, you posted an article on the Brew Hoop page about, putting this together to say we're going to be streaming. You guys are more than welcome. Those who already comment, or if you don't already, go on to Twitter, or wherever, just give us ideas, because we're going to need them over these coming months, especially if we're going to try and keep, whether we do it weekly, bi-weekly, whatever the deal is. So, or semi-weekly. I don't even know how it would be. So just let us know if there are any things you'd like us to talk about or suggestions for how we could improve.
Yes, please do. And, it was great to have everyone on commenting. For anyone who's listening via the podcast, which, could be the majority of people, tune in. We're going to, we'll let everyone know when we're going live on brewhoop.com with an article. We'll listen to this back and hear how it translates to podcast. Hopefully it's not, we're not losing too much in translation. But thank you everyone for tuning in. It was awesome. This was a really nice distraction. Hopefully you guys, have a really nice week. Go to brewhoop.com. We occasionally will have, threads where you can talk about basketball. You can talk about it's a, good community for all of us. And, follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, and we'll talk to everyone again soon. Thank you so much for joining us.